Uh-huh, 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 Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this recorded video. Frog Skin Abominations. Toe Curd and Levin. Hey, it's me. I'm Grim Griswold's Grim here on the internet. And as you and friends of the channel will know, as you and friends of the channel and all the smart people that come here know, Alex Jones, before they took him out, Alex Jones warned us that they were turning the frogs gay. And ladies and gentlemen, this beholder eye stalk has caught a glimpse of an update on what they do after they turn the frogs gay. So stay tuned. Here we go.
So this is very isomorphic to problems in neuroscience, to problems in artificial intelligence. It's trying to understand the scaling of minds, and in trying to do that, we pose the following problem. Okay, standard tadpoles make, standard frog eggs make frog embryos, and everybody's kind of used to that. Even though you can remind, I always remind my students, did you realize that if I gave you the frog genome, you couldn't tell me what a frog looked like, right? You could compare it to other genomes that you did know what, but that's cheating. So okay. So we asked the simple question: where does the goal of making a frog or tadpole really come from? And how hardwired is that? So what we did was we took some skin that we scraped off of an early frog embryo. We set it aside in a different environment, and we said, okay, now you're free to sort of reboot your multicellularity. You're here. We've relieved all of the constraints of the rest of the embryo. You're no longer getting instructive signals from endoderm and from mesoderm and from all these other things. You're no longer subject to all these other signals. What are you going to do? All kinds of things they could have done. They didn't do any of that. What they did instead was to combine together and to form a little ball that grew cilia, these little motile hairs on the outer surface. Now, cilia are normally sitting on the outside of embryos, and they're there to kind of redistribute the mucus around and to, make the pathogens sort of keep moving.
I don't know if you guys can tell, but that looks like a little horse. This frog cell abomination looks like a little horse. See, look. You see up here in the top here. This little guy here looks like a little horse.
Moving and not sticking, redistribute the mucus around and to, make the pathogens sort of keep moving and not stick to the skin. They're used to keep the surface of the tadpole clean. But instead, these cells basically repurposed that genetically encoded hardware. The cilia themselves are genetically encoded. All the proteins necessary to make a cilium are in the genome. So they have that already. But what they did was they assembled themselves into a new kind of architecture, this spherical thing, and then they used the cilia to propel themselves. So they started running around. They started moving around. And so we have these amazing videos of them moving around singly, moving around in groups, interacting, going through a maze, going back and forth in various configurations. They have all kinds of behavior.
Listen, if there's one thing the history of evolution has taught us, it's that life will not be contained. Life breaks free, expands into territories, and crashes through barriers painfully, maybe even dangerously, but there it is.
Almost entirely in half, they will join back and make a xenobot again. And so the coolest thing about them is, and by the way, we don't know their cognitive capacities yet. Okay, we're only beginning now to start to see, can they learn, do they have preferences, all these kinds of things. We don't know yet.
Ta-da! The end. That is the oldest video I have on YouTube. Right there. The children's book for the 1%. Oh, hey everybody. Welcome to tonight's Virtually Not Alone Network event. The Frog Skin Commentary Distillate Distillation. True story. I made the AI make this thumbnail for us today. It is the frog skin abomination, and the base picture was one of the two guys talking. Ha! No. Oh yeah. Remember, everybody, there is no agency. We want what's best for you. Hey, okay, Jonathan, you sir had a hot, hey, palpable, virtually giving a shit. How dare you, sir? We better roll some savings throws for people. Welcome. I think Dumir put out 3 today. I watched the first one and it was good. We'll run that in a moment, but first you must choose. You must choose to play or not. You don't have to, I guess. But the thing is, you're swimming in a sea of people trying to influence and control your mind. Here at the Grim Grizz live stream on the YouTube channel Griswold Grim, we give you a savings throw against the mind control. You get to choose survival, social, wisdom, or heart. And if that die gets over a 10, then you take half damage from the mind control that follows. So, survival, social, wisdom, or heart? Choose! Survivalists. 6. It's dark in here. Socialists. 10. Sophists. Also a 10. And the heart folks. Coming in strong with an 18 tonight. Joseph, good to see you. Here's what that hot drop from Demir I talked about earlier. Moments ago.
So, the flow state. 2 important sets of conditions, and very often people only talk about one, and that's a little bit of a misrepresentation. So, the flow state is in situations in which the demand of the situation is slightly beyond your skills. So you both have to apply all the skills you can with as much sort of attention and concentration as you possibly can, and you have to actually be stretching your skills. Now, in this circumstance, people report optimal experience. Optimal in 2 ways. Optimal in that this is one of the best experiences I've had in my life. It's distinct from pleasure, and yet it explains why people do very bizarre things like rock climbing, because it's a good flow induction. Right? But they also mean optimal in a second sense, my best performance. So it's both the best experience and the best performance. So Csikszentmihalyi also talked about the information flow conditions you need, right, in order for there to be this state of flow. And then I'll talk about what it's like to be in flow in a sec. What you need is 3 things. You need the information that you're getting to be clear. It can't be ambiguous or vague. Think about a rock climber. If it's ambiguous and vague, you're in trouble, right? There has to be tightly coupled feedback between what you do and how the environment responds. So when you act, there's an immediate response. There isn't a big time lag between your action and your ability to detect the response from the environment. 3rd, failure has to matter. Error really matters.
So there should be some anxiety about failure.
And failure matters. So that, because...
Like to you, the person that participates.
Yes. Now, when you're in the flow state, and notice how this sits on the boundary between the secular and the sacred. When you're in the flow state, people report a tremendous sense of at-one-ment with the environment.
I have a serious problem saying atonement, so I say instead at-one-ment. But this is Jonathan Dumir. They're in the Hive Mind chat with Jelena and Joseph and Magic. Is the fellow who reaped this clip. This is reaping when you pull when you pull a clip of content from something, and whether or not you make it pretty with the music like he did, that's the reaping. You're reaping a clip because you have a scythe.
Report a loss of a particular kind of self-consciousness, that narrative nurturing nanny in your head that, how do I look? Do people like me? How do I look? How's my hair? Do people like me? Should I have said that? That all goes away. You're free from that. You're free from the most sadistic superego self-critic you could possibly have, at least for a while. The world is vivid. It's super salient to you. There's an ongoing sense of discovery. Although often you know you're exerting a lot of metabolic effort, it feels effortless. So in the flow state when you're sparring, your hand just goes up for the block and your strike just goes through the empty space. Or if you're a goalie in hockey, I've got to mention hockey once, I'm a Canadian, right?
Yeah.
You put up...
I'm Canadian. So thanks for that, palpable. No, palpable. Jonathan. Look what you've done. Look what you've done. Welcome everyone to today's live stream, Frog Skin Commentary, where I will be making a distillate. I will be distilling a clip distillate. Like I said, what Dumir did there was reap the clip. Okay, you can reap a bunch of clips that are a distillate of an event and string them together like I did way back when. So I'm going to now show you the one I did way back when, and then start with the making of a next one, which involves watching a really long thing and pulling out the relevant bits for the distillate. So that's where the frog skin commentary part is going to come in. But first, here's what a clip distillate looks like from another thing. From another thing.
That logo is called The Meaning of Music, and it's actually a sculpture that I made in 1985. I'm pleased today to have the opportunity to speak with people, John Vervaeke, Bishop Barron, and Jonathan Pajot. I'm going to ask you what you think meaning means. Implicit idea, I suppose, that meaning has different depths, and that religious meaning is among the deepest of depths, and like a lotus flower that sort of comes up from the darkest depths, up through the dark water, and then blooms on the surface of the water in the sun. I'd like you to riff on that. We'll go from man to man to do that.
Talking about meaning in this context, we're using meaning as a metaphor, is we're doing it all right now, and we're doing it like this. I'm standing out, I'm salient. There's an element of arousal, there's affectively laden connectedness. This is what's known as embodied cognition. This is a dynamical self-organizing process, and you can feel it, and you're evolving in this dynamically coupled fashion, a salience landscape that makes you feel that you're here now in this particular state of consciousness, in this situational awareness. So you're deeply fundamentally connected. Central cognitive agency. If you don't have that, you're not a cognitive agent. And this dynamical, embodied, evolving connectedness, a core feature and dimension of our whole agency. To bind together, we're looking through it, and by means of it, it affords our agency. Celebrate it. Opposite of what happens in addiction. My agency is opening up. The world is opening up. Inexhaustible fount of emerging intelligibility. That's the experience of sacredness. Deepest mutual resonance between ourselves and the depths of reality. I hope that was helpful.
I was listening to the Jupiter Symphony. When you look at the world, there's a central point of focus. It's a very small area that becomes very clear. And the nothingness you don't even perceive. It's just not there. And that's that's very much like what consciousness is. And you focus your fovea on what's most meaningful. So that's sort of like a metaphor for consciousness and meaning. And then my goal is to have an interesting conversation. That story that's guiding me is nested in a larger story, which outside of that is another story. And then outside of that, there's another presumption, which is, well, why would I bother trying to make the world a better place. And that's where you start to shade into the religious. It's like, who exactly am I imitating when I enact that morality? Implicit figure at the outer edge of the narrative structuring of my consciousness and meaning realization, and the nothingness you don't even perceive. It's just not there. This is independent of religious belief as far as I'm concerned. Christ is the symbolic realization of our culture's determination of the embodiment of the ideal. And it's an image, and it grips us. It's the thing we imitate or we fight against. We're in that whether we like it or not. And then, and I suppose that was an experience of God, if you want to put it that way. And that's where this starts to shade into the religious per se. So that's it for me. So Bishop, do you want to take it from there?
Virtually. Good to be with all of you. Canadian Jesuit. I guess I would say meaning is to be in a purposive relationship to a value. The true, the good, and the beautiful, right? The three transcendental properties of being. The mind is like a bird that flies and it perches for a time, it looks, and then it flies again. And a meaningful life is one that's lived in a purposive relationship to values. It's seeking them. A life lived in purposive relationship to the source of goodness, truth, and beauty, which is God. We experience things in the world as more or less true, good, and beautiful. And we also notice them ordered hierarchically. That's truer, that's better, that's more beautiful. The properties of being, the good, the true, and the beautiful. And being is by its very nature unlimited. You see those hierarchies only finally in relationship to some unconditioned form of goodness, truth, and beauty. That's religious meaning, it seems to me, is to be in purposive relationship to that. And so I can't go on indefinitely. That would make my act of the will incoherent. Be in relationship to this most alluring horizon of all desire. And so finally, I want not just this particular good, I want goodness itself. That's a religious relationship.
Jonathan?
The reason why we perceive hierarchy is because we're always judging or perceiving or trying to evaluate whether something is good. This desire makes you see the pattern of the apple because you have to engage with it. You have to relate to it. You have to eat it. But this pattern, let's say, of binding, it stacks up. But it also does something else, is that it stacks up people together. It binds us together as well. That can also kind of help you understand religious practice. Every act of recognition of a good is going to be a mini celebration, but that stacks up together in terms of people gathering and singing and in order to celebrate the highest good.
Let me just, that's dopaminergically mediated. There's a fundamental neuroscientific reality underneath the idea that to perceive something good in relationship to a higher good is a celebration. And I mean that directly, like meaning is derived from this nested hierarchy. And then I felt that whatever had descended, it seemed that as if it was sorrowful, and it departed from me slowly. And
so in the same way that the world reveals itself to us as this hierarchy of the good, it also reveals itself to us cosmically. That's why there are temples. That's why there's the law of Moses that was received on the top of the mountain, that there is a cosmic revelation of the same pattern that you encounter as an individual. And so that is what ends up creating these revelations of being into the world and binding us together as a body instead of just these disparate individuals.
Oh, and see, it's a lot of thinky-talky stuff. Like, I've fallen into a somewhat thinky-talky corner because, well, basically Joe Rogan groomed everybody to listen to 3-hour shit, and then, like, these guys decided they could fill 3 hours, and now... But once in this thinky-talky space, my stabby interjections have earned me a modicum of respect or something. And one of those was those. Get off the screen, John. No, not. What is it in the group? Why is it in the group? There's group sources in OBS now. I don't know if you know that. But welcome. So one of the nice things that happened to me was this Karen lady had me on her channel, and she had a great thinky-talky talk with this John Vervaeke fellow, who I have recently come to realize that, like, I have this thought now, and it feels like a memory from my timeline, that, like, the Church of Cog, the Church of Optimal Grip, is like a serious player in the next decade. And I think he has something to do with it. So I'm keeping a close eye for the sake of humanity and my troll crush, because boy howdy is he animated when he speaks. And so here we've come to do the frog skin commentary. Oh guys, I have the best news. Remember anybody this guy? This guy? It turns out his name is Goose. Goose. His name is Goose, and I'll tell you why. His name is Goose. You remember the claw? The claw? Well, Goose didn't. When the lobster mutation took the monkey, it didn't give him a claw, so he had to make his own claw, and he ran around goosing people with it, and so they called him Goose. Goose the lobster monkey is our logo monkey. Thank you, Goose, for all you do. And now the frog skin commentary should begin thanks to the shadow cabal of production executives. And those are other topics not for today's episode. So please disregard. Speaking of topics not for today's episode, we have the topic board where, like, I love questions about anything on it. Go for it anytime. Not today, but okay, it's a micro reindeer. Remember, Embody, there is no agency. We want what's best for you. White carrots and parsnips with a peach glaze. Oh, I guess we should start. Wait, will we do this? Oh, wow. Hi. This is the one we're doing the commentary on. Here's part of the intro. We're not really going to commentary much on the intro.
So happy to be here again today with Dr. Michael Levin and Dr. John Vervaeke. Dr. John Vervaeke of the University of Toronto and Dr. Michael Levin of Tufts
I'm not
University
Karen, but
for a more detailed.
Okay, when I move my face off, that's Karen. Ready? Hey, it's Karen. I'm gonna go sit over here by John. John, do you mind if I sit by you? Okay, here we go.
Introduction, you can see the link to our previous conversation below the video. Both of these gentlemen they teach, they research, they write, and they share their knowledge and creativity on YouTube. So we're really thankful for that. We left off in our last conversation talking about the placebo effect and the implications of that.
They don't get back into that at all. Hey, bongers. Hey, John, that's my friend Bong. Oh, wait, you can't see him. Where's it? I don't know if there's a spot for you guys, really. I mean, all right, where you're looking at right now, John, that's bongers over there. I don't know, I guess you can sit on Karen's shoulder maybe, and if you were skinnier. You can hey, okay, you guys know I love you. I'll bring you on if you say anything important. How about that?
Seems to imply some sort of sacrifice, to make a choice to execute the rule rather than to go off and do what I want to do. Because in the skin cells situation, they have a responsibility to hold the organism together. And if they go off and do their own thing, I mean, if they did just go off and do their own thing without your help, that would obviously be the end of the organism. So I just want to throw that in there, this whole idea of knowledge and choice, and how that seems to imply some sort of a value hierarchy. And throw that in with your placebo effect and see where it goes.
Yeah. Well, let me back up a little bit to be really clear on what I am and I'm not claiming about the Xenobots, and then we can talk about choice and value and all that. What I was saying is that
you know, I torture these things, lady. They're totally not conscious agents.
what we are liberating these cells from are the instructive interactions with other cells that normally get them to do this particular kind of behavior. And we know this is just an experimental result, that when you isolate them in a way that they don't have these other signals, this is what they do. Now,
so he's studying what happens when you take a human or a cell and isolate it from the others, and it doesn't know what to do, and then they watch what it does. And these cats, so
okay, so now I'm not, here's what I'm not claiming. I'm not claiming that any of this process, either at the level of the cells or at the level of the Xenobots, has a high level of agency. We actually don't know, right? We are in the process now, but we haven't published anything on the capacity of these processes to solve problems, to pursue goals, to have memories, to we haven't published anything on that. So I'm not claiming anything whatsoever about that. So let's for the moment put aside this idea of how much agency they have, because it certainly is possible to make decisions and take choices without knowing what the consequences are going to be, right? So if you're a rat in a maze and you've got two doors, you got to go in one or the other, you have no idea what's on the other side. You still have to make a choice of some sort. Mm-hmm. So decision making and competent behavior does not imply some sort of high level metacognition that you know what's going to happen next. So I'm not claiming any of that stuff. So
all right. Unfortunately, I believe that disclaimer is gonna have to be one of the clips for the distillate. So we stop it like that, and then we can stretch it out because it's just this fella talking. And we hide myself over here. We backtrack it to the good part.
Let's just of how much agency they have, because it's for the moment put aside. So I'm not claiming anything whatsoever about that. So let's for the moment to solve problems, to pursue goals, to have memories, to we haven't published anything on that. So I'm not claiming anything whatsoever about that. So let's for the moment put aside this idea of how much agency they have, because it certainly is possible to make decisions and take choices without knowing what the consequences are going to be, right? So if you're a rat in a maze and you've got two doors, you got to go in one or the other, you have no idea what's on the other side. You still have to make a choice of some sort. Mm-hmm. So decision making and competent behavior does not imply some sort.
All right, that's right. Remember, embody, there is no agency. Top feed, are you being not nice? Are you being not, sir? I don't see how any of that is relevant. I ain't got time for your bullshit. I ain't got time for that, sir. I'm doing this nonsense. Remember, embody, I've moved on. Think about it. Like John thinks about it.
Sort of high level metacognition that you know what's going to happen next. So I'm not claiming any of that stuff. So let's just because we don't know yet. And I really believe that this is an empirical question. You can't decide this in an armchair just sitting, oh my God, look at them, they're so cute, they're definitely have cognition. Or conversely, the way people mostly do it is they say, well, I don't see a brain and a cortex there, so forget it, they must have zero. So I don't think either of those things works. I think you have to do experiments, and we are still in the process. However, to address your other point about the value of these different levels, look, it's very easy for us, because right now who's having this conversation are these emergent human intelligences that are talking at a particular level. We also have all kinds of other selves in our bodies.
See, the thing about a good distillate is that it's a lot of tiny little ones.
To address your other point about the value of these different levels, look.
I like boots and cats. I like boots and cats. Oh, what do we have here? What do we have here?
Definitely, have cognition. Or conversely, the way people mostly do it is they say, well, I don't see a brain and a cortex there, so forget it, they must have zero. So I do it is they say, well, I don't see a brain and a cortex there, so conversely, the way people mostly do it is they say, well, I don't see a brain and a cortex there, so forget it, they must have zero. So I don't think either of those things works. I think you have to do experiments, and we are still in the process. However, to address your other point about the value of these different levels, look, it's very easy for us, because right now who's having this conversation are these emergent human intelligences that are talking at a particular level. We also have all kinds of other selves in our bodies, your organs, your tissues. There's lots of other things, but they're not verbal. They're not having this conversation. So it's very easy for us at this level to put a high value on being a body of a particular size, and to say that, well, when these skin cells shirk their duty, as do cancer cells and failed embryos and whatever, this is terrible. They, they go off on their own to do some other single cell things that make amoebas very happy, right? So amoebas do great on their own as single cells. They don't participate in making nice bodies, and we, from our sort of vantage point, say, well, that's not as good. What you really want is a nice, complex organism. And these cells are basically just, for whatever reason, they're failing to accomplish that. However, the thing is that's a view from a very specific perspective of scale and organization. So we have to be really careful.
Very specific, guys.
Because one can take that to its logical conclusion.
You guys, it's a very specific, very specific. This is an act of honor. I'm taking it seriously, reverently. This is me. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Doing it right. I'm doing it right. Doing it. Why am I putting this back here when it's probably still his turn to talk? I don't know. Why don't you make a different scene where it's just all the time on one person?
And say, in that case, all of us humans should join some particular greater.
Yes, all of us humans should join. What? What are you guys doing? The Jesse Jackson of agency likes to add "al" to words like dynamic and metabolic. It is normal to hear words and see lips moving and not comprehend a bit. Happens every time I go to China. Depends on how good the bong is. It is so good. It's normal. No, hi everybody.
More idea to kind of go along.
Oh no! I clicked off. God damn it! Paul is in his bathroom now. Error. Consider turning down your video settings. Oh. I don't know. I think that picture of the frogs is too great. It's too great. I'm grabbing the tiniest little bits, and I just got lost. I clicked off. You ever click off? Oh wow! This was here. I probed into my past to find like the last time I did a distillate, and in probing my past, I found 4 years ago. 4 years ago, yes, tomorrow. 4 years ago tomorrow, this was a thing. Enjoy this thing I didn't plan on playing. No, I'm not on the screen while you watch this shit.
Hey everybody. I thought I'd drop an update, lay a brick as it were. I have some plans in the work and some people willing to collaborate, it seems. Citizen X said he'd let me interview him for one, and some other ones I'm not telling you about yet. I think how it's going to work is I'm going to spend a week live on Twitch putting together a piece for here on the YouTubes. So like if you want to be behind the scenes production, part of the community thing, I'll be doing that on the Twitch shortly, and if you ask, I'll tell you about it. But
if you ask, I'll tell you about it. Who says that kind of stuff? Like, what kind of jackass would say that sort of thing? This guy, I don't know why you put up with this fella. Encoding overloaded. Consider, I don't know what settings to turn down. Jeebus. What are you crying about? Why? What, the output resolution for the stream? Man, can't mess with that. I'm busy. I guess if it breaks bad enough, you guys would know, right? You guys would know. You know. No, don't stop. Finish what you started, Graham. Finish what you fucking started. Okay, it's this way. It's this way. It's this way.
Has a high level of agency. We actually don't know, right? We are in the process now, but we haven't published anything on the capacity of these processes to solve problems, to pursue goals, to have memories, to we haven't published anything on that. So I'm not claiming anything whatsoever, because we don't know yet. And I really believe that this is an empirical question. You can't decide this in an armchair just sitting, oh my God, look at them, they're so cute, they're definitely have cognition. Or conversely, the way people mostly do it is they say, well, I don't see a brain in the cortex there, so forget it, they must have zero. So I don't think either of those things works. I think you have to do experiments, and we are still in the process. However,
I'm a scientist person with a reputation. I can't let you get your woo on me.
Address your other point about the value of these different levels. Look, it's very easy for us because right now, who's having this conversation are these emergent human intelligences that are talking at a particular level. We also have all kinds of other
the level thing. I guess we were further.
Specific perspective of scale and organization. So we have to be really careful of that, because one can take that to its logical conclusion and say, in that case, all of us humans should join some particular greater thing, and what happens to us doesn't matter. This thing will have its own goals in some other space, and right. So we know how that works out. Like, that's been tried, right, in society. We know how that works out. That can work out very badly. And so I think we have to realize that you have to be really careful with value judgments on these things, because, and this isn't the kind of one way to look at what a composite self is, or a composite agent, is that it gets the parts to do things they otherwise would not do. If the parts are already doing
one way to look at a compartmentalized agent is that it gets others around it to do things they would not otherwise do.
things. One way to look at what a composite self is, or a composite agent, is that it gets the parts. This is the kind of one way to look at what a composite self is, or a composite agent, is that it gets the parts to do things they otherwise would not do. If the parts are already doing things they would do anyway, then you've got a pile or a heap. You don't have a coordinated agent. So a coordinated agent harnesses their parts towards some kind of action in a different space that the parts wouldn't normally be doing. And in the body, this happens all the time. Your cells would be off having lovely, lives as amoebas, going wherever they want, proliferating as much as they want. We don't let.
Hey guys, have you been having lovely vibes as an amoeba? Sometimes this show is like trying to follow Philip K. Dick through his exeges. The fuck is an exeges? Exeges of Miriam. See, it's important that you're able to scream at your dictionary, and so I choose Merriam-Webster. Dictionary by Merriam-Webster. It's your exegesis. Is that how you spell it?
Exegesis.
Am I muted? Oh.
Exegesis.
Fructify.
Exegesis.
Fructify. Fructify. Fructify.
Exegesis.
An explanation or critical interpretation of a text. That's kind of what I'm doing, but it's a video. Is it a video exegesis?
Exegesis.
What do we fructify?
Fructify.
It's fructify. I don't care what that guy says. Oh, to make bear fruit. To make bear fruit. Or productive.
Let them do, the body doesn't let them do that, because otherwise, right, you don't have a proper anatomy. So
Grim FPV. I like your fancy symbolic avatar, Grim. What does FPV stand for?
So
is it buffering? It keeps giving me an error. Consider turning down video settings. Which ones? There's so many.
That's what it is to be
your
part of
exegesis. Everybody, you ready to fructify your exegesis? Here we go.
A larger agent is to do things you otherwise wouldn't want to do, which is great from the perspective of that agent, maybe not so great from the perspective of the parts. And it's hard for us to take the perspective of single cells, but it may also be hard for large-scale structures, such as certain social structures, to take the perspective of individual humans and value those as well, right? So I think we have to be really careful about stuff like that, about putting, just acknowledging the perspective that when we make these value judgments, we're using a very
Ding, fries are done.
Specific perspective. So I would say then, and then I'll stop here and see what John thinks. But I would say that it is not the case that that individual cells are somehow better off as bodies, and that the xenobots are not as good as proper embryos, and the skin really ought to be behaving as good skin. I would say not.
Okay, so this Grim FPV guy says it's because it's drone, but it's probably his favorite.
Those things. I would say what you have here is an amazing evolution. Produces this amazing hardware that is able to scale its agency, and it can do.
Evolution produces this amazing hardware that's able to scale its agency.
Those things, proper embryos, and the skin really ought to be behaving as good skin. I would say not those things. I would say what you have here is an amazing evolution. Produces this amazing hardware that is able to scale its agency, and it can do that in many different ways. So you've got molecular networks that can work together to produce a cell and get those molecular pathways to do things that chemistry does not do on its own. And those cells, in certain circumstances, can work together to make an embryo. In other cases, they can work together to be a xenobot. Who knows what else they can be coaxed to build. And
Who? Grimgris knows. Mike. Hey, Mike. I know what else they can be coaxed to be. That's why I'm forming the lobstamonkee army with our mascot Goose. Because, you see, allow me to explain. What happened was, first, there was humans, and then there was churches, and then there was oral traditions, and then there was writing stuff down, and then there was the printing press, and then there was the telegraph, and then there was the radio and the television, and now we make the television, except it's not television. It's personally curated and selected virtual out-of-body presencing together, virtually not alone. And so as such, I'm helping people realize that this is a participatory medium, and if we school together and learn together like fish, then I can do that thing you said.
So you've got molecular networks that can work together to produce a cell and get those molecular pathways to do things that chemistry does not do on its own. And those cells, in certain circumstances, can work together to make an embryo. In other cases, they can work together to be a xenobot. Who knows what else they can be coaxed to build. And all of those things are manifestations of the amazing ability of the scaling of cognition, which of course we're just beginning to understand.
Hold on. I want to be able to say that. Hold on.
And those cells, in certain circumstances, can work together to make an embryo. In other cases, they can work together to be a xenobot. Who knows what else they can be coaxed to build. And all of those things are manifestations of the amazing ability of the scaling of cognition, which of course we're just beginning to understand.
All of those things are part of the amazing ability of scaling cognition that was handcrafted by evolution. Evolution, men have named you.
That was a beautiful answer. I think I'm going to say something that's convergent with what Michael said, but maybe a bit divergent. I'm not sure. And we can.
Oh, hey there, it's John Vervaeke, everybody. Hey.
Throw up a set. That was a beautiful answer. I think I'm going to say something that's convergent with what.
Hold on. I need that.
Beginning to understand.
That was a beautiful answer. I think I'm going to say something that's convergent with what Michael said, but maybe a bit divergent. I'm not sure.
Really, just that's a beautiful answer and that wonderful smile,
And we can throw it back and forth. My initial way of responding to you, Karen, would be to invoke Urero's notion of constraint. We can talk about sort of bottom-up causation and top-down constraint. Causes are events, constraints are conditions, causes are happenings, constraints are orderings of probability. And you can look at, think of an example I like to use, taken from Uraro, ultimately inspired by Aristotle, who has a deep influence on Uraro. You have all the microcosmic events creating the structure of the.
Do you guys remember that deep influence what's his face had on Uraro?
Tree, but the structure of the tree increases the probability that a chlorophyll molecule will interact with a photon molecule. So by participating in the tree structure, the chlorophyll molecule has a much greater chance of interacting with proton.
Hi. Hi, are you a chlorophyll molecule? Well, if you join the Grim Gray's hive mind chats, you have a better chance of interacting with the other type of molecule.
And so you have to think about these layers in these sort of, you shouldn't think them as just what am I trying to say? You shouldn't think of it as like a single ontological relation. It is a causal emergence up and a constraint emergence down. And
it's a causal.
That means
it's a causal emergence up and what?
You shouldn't think of it as like a single ontological relation. It is a causal emergence up and a constraint emergence down.
A causal emergence up and a constraint emergence down. Look at all the emergences, everyone. Alyosha says if John weren't speculating on pure conjecture, hypothetically, I would agree with him.
And that means any simple value assignment, here's where I'm agreeing with Michael, is going to be very problematic because your ontological relations are not just like if you're just doing a hierarchy, you're presuming a single ontological relation between the levels. But if there are two kinds of relations, that challenges how you're going to attach valuation to the levels. So in that sense, I'm in agreement with him. But then it's even more complicated because constraint, there are two kinds. There are selective, which reduce the probabilities for a particular system, and there's an enabling, but they're relative to interactions with the environment. So yes, the skin cells get a certain kind of freedom, and it's liberated when they're removed from these constraints. But the thing is, those selective constraints are also counterbalanced by a whole bunch of enabling constraints. The skin cells, by being part of an organism,